Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices for the Mausoleum, and welcome to another episode of Beast and Booze with my co-host, Ivan Lopez.
Welcome, everybody.
We're back with another episode of Beast and Booze. Basically a show where we're going to have a drink and talk about some beasties. If you missed the previous episode, Ivan schooled us on the Spectre Moose of Maine, which is terrifying. If you missed that episode, I will link it in the cloud so you can go watch it. And so that means this week it's my turn. And so people who know who I am probably knew this one was going to be on the list. Logo, tattoo, picture in the back that you can't see because it's covered up. And so the beastie that I picked to discuss is the Wendigo. Isn't this a cool picture?
It's a really cool picture.
It's so random, but I love it so much. I found when I was just doing some research, I found some really cool stuff. So I'm going to start by telling you what I knew about the Wendigo before I went into the research side of things, because I did learn some stuff I didn't know. The basics of what most people know about a Wendigo, of course, does come from Native American folklore. It's obviously a lot of people are familiar with the concept of cannibalism and how it relates to a Wendigo and people turning into Wendigos from cannibalism. And these are just some of the really basic things that people typically know about Wendigos. So there's a couple of different things. There's a couple of different tribes, I should say, that have lore related to the Wendigo. I kind of stuck with the same one for most of my talking points, but it's folklore that derived from tribes that spoke the language of Algonquin. If I'm butchering that, I think I said that correctly, though I looked it up earlier. And it's interesting because I never thought about the fact that Wendigo meant anything, as far as what the name breakdown is. But the term Wendigo actually straightforward just means evil spirit. So there's a couple of things, or a couple ways rather, that Wendigos kind of come to be. They're of course associated with cannibalism, but there is a possession element, which is something I did not know until I was a little older, not that long ago, a few years ago. That is actually adds, it makes a lot more sense, I think, because what we think of as people eating people, I think the original lore focuses more on the spiritual side of it, the more possession-y side. So essentially, there's a couple of ways that a person can become a Wendigo. One of the ways is possession during a time of basically when a human spirit is broken. So extreme hunger, extreme loss of hope, cold, these super, just really hard circumstances. It essentially opens the door for a Wendigo to take possession of someone's spirit. It's also associated with things like greed, overconsumption, excessive living. It's not always directly related to cannibalism, which is pretty interesting because I have a tattoo of a Wendigo, and when people ask me about it, it's nice to have something to say other than cannibalistic creature. Because that's not things you talk about with people you don't really know that well. And so it's nice to that there's layers to the lore. It's definitely not as, I guess, westernized as we have made it. There is a lot of other things that go into it. One of the other ways that somebody can become a Wendigo is it is said that if you dream of a Wendigo, and in that dream, the Wendigo bites you, you can become one yourself after you've woken from that dream. The other is, on the same dream side of things, is if you dream of a Wendigo and just dream of it, it essentially opens a pathway for a Wendigo spirit to find you and potentially take over. And and then the other major one, and this one we've seen specifically in, for example, the movie Antlers, where when a Wendigo it takes over someone or attaches itself or whatever turns someone, um they transform physically into the beast itself, which makes it more of a physical creature and less of like a spiritual entity. And yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because Wendigos are not as popular as I would like them to be personally, but they are in a lot of more modern media. So there's a video game called Until Dawn. It's been out for a really long time, so I'm super sorry if this is a spoiler, but it's been out for a very long time. And that game addresses the side of a Wendigo essentially being a curse of someone who has committed the taboo crime of cannibalism. These two sisters end up stranded in a snowstorm after they have fallen off of a cliff and they can't get back up and they're weak. And one of them is just too weak to go on, and one eats the other one, and that one turns into a Wendigo. And that's what happens in Until Dawn. And then like I said, you've got the movie Antlers, which is the version of the story where someone physically transforms and turns into a Wendigo. Which is, I like that there's so many ways it can happen, because to me that's like, it can happen in physical form, it can happen in a spiritual form, and anything around possession is like super fascinating to me to begin with. You wouldn't want to walk in the woods and become possessed by a Wendigo.
That doesn't sound like a great time. This is a terrifying creature.
They are. Yeah. And we're talking again about something with like giant antlers. And it has like there's a few different, ways that these things are described. There's the biggest commonalities are really sharp teeth, really sharp claws, humanoid in nature, but definitely a monster. And then the antlers. So those are the things that are typically the same. But I think there's even a side of Wendigos that go into shape shifting. And so in terms of turning into looking more like people or looking like other animals, like I think I have a picture of one of those. Did I not save it? Maybe I didn't. But there's like a couple different versions. So there's like this one, which kind of looks like an animal. It's still got some human elements to it, the fingers, the legs. And then sometimes it's like, there's other versions of these where they look more skeletal. So it's like mostly, sunken in faces. The parts that are the human parts literally look like they're decaying and rotting. Because the human part is not the primary, it's barely even a host at that point. It's becoming something else. Which I think is pretty cool. I think they look cool. I love the like naturey ones, the ones that look like they've got like, moss or bark on them because they're a part of nature, which typically, of course, leans more on the spiritual side than the other side of it. And yeah, I was trying to think of some of the things. So those are a lot of that stuff. Most of that stuff I knew. The thing I did not know about was the dream thing. I did not know anything about dreaming about a Wendigo. I feel like, why would you want, I mean, I guess you can't really control it, but that if you dream of it, then it's just like it was meant to happen, and that's like your fate.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about it. Actually, I didn't know most of this.
Yeah.
And is there anything that that the Wendigo can't do? I mean,
yeah,
it's
it's a well-rounded cryptid.
Yeah, absolutely. And the dream thing is that's really getting me right now, because
yeah,
a lot of times people rely on dreams for explanations for things, and people interpret dreams. So dreams are a very vulnerable part of human nature. So
totally.
it makes it so much more frightening that it can't access you through that.
Yeah.
Is this Native American in nature?
Yes. Yeah.
Or origin?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
That's the thing. So like the westernized story of where there's two different stories about where Wendigos came from in origin. And the westernized one, white man one, is that there was a hunter who was out with a hunting party, got lost in a snowstorm, and he had to revert to cannibalism to survive, and he became a Wendigo. However, one of the more probably closer to what actually came to be known as a Wendigo was actually a Native American in 1879 named Swift Runner, who essentially murdered and ate his entire family during, once again, a particularly hard winter. They were starving, and he decided he needed to be, survival of the fittest. And so he murdered and ate his entire family. And when the other members of their community learned what he did in an effort to save himself, he announced that he had been possessed by a spirit and that the spirit had possessed him and made him do those things. And that wasn't, he didn't do that of his own free will. They still didn't buy it. But that's one of the original stories, was that, it was because it is Native American in origin. That's one of the first stories known about where this mention of a Wendigo, this evil cannibalistic spirit, came into play, and essentially was just someone who did a horrible thing and needed a scapegoat. And then, now you've got all these like branches off of what actually, what a Wendigo is by like now. And he was a Cree Native American. And then the other, and this one was the one that I found the most common, because even though there were other tribes, the Cree seemed to be particularly, I guess, invested in the concept of a Wendigo, because the other story, because there is actually sightings, like Wendigo sightings, which, when you're talking about monsters and lore and cryptids, I think sometimes when people think cryptids, they don't think something can be a cryptid if there's not a sighting, which isn't exactly true, because cryptids are just monsters that with lore around them. But a Wendigo, there have been sightings of Wendigos. And one of the first mentioned sightings was in the 1900s. And this is a Cree chief that we have the English name of. I don't know what his Native American name was. I could not find it. But they named him Jack Fiddler, because that's what we do. And anyway, he had he told this story over, the span of his lifetime, and he had seen and killed 14 Wendigos.
How do you kill something like that?
That's part of your quiz. I'm not going to mention it yet.
Well, I've already answered in advance, and I have no idea.
I made my questions multiple choice.
Oh, okay, cool.
And yeah, and so it's interesting, because you've got a lot of layers with a Wendigo, with, obviously, like, again, the concept of greed, living in excess, which is one of the things that plays into the dream thing. Is typically it's said that the people who dream of a Wendigo are people who deserve to be taken by the Wendigo. So it's not supposedly meant to happen to people who don't live in excess, or not gluttons, or not greedy. They don't suffer avarice in that way. They're people who are, giving and selfless. Like, those are not people who are typically going to dream of a Wendigo and even be able to be taken by one. Right. Which I thought was really interesting, because it's essentially, it's a curse. In most cases, it's a curse, like a werewolf, but slightly different.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I was wondering if the dream thing was at random, if that's just what it does. But there's a lot more gravity there. There's so much more weight to that kind of lore when it's
a punishment almost.
Yeah, when it's punishment. Yeah.
It's like if you don't do this, then Krampus is going to take you away, or what I mean. Like, it's a very
Isn't it funny how so many stories like that are done to teach people to not act a certain way?
Yeah.
And they're so violent.
They are
so gruesome.
Yeah, because
you got to get this point across. So we're going to make this super terrible.
Yeah, because once you become a Wendigo, you become insatiable. And the desire to eat human flesh becomes more than just a want. It's a need. You have to. I read a short story in the Nightmare Soup collection. I don't know if you're familiar, but they're very similar to Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Ooh, okay.
So it's a collection of, I think there's two of those, and then there's two called like the Nightmare Society. No, it can't be Nightmare Society. Nightmare something else. But anyway, but it's a collection. I have there's four in total. Um, but there's a really good one in there that I really liked because it was about this very small group of guys who went away to a cabin for like a guy's weekend to go hunting and doing whatever. And um, one of them gets lured out by the smell of meat, and
Oh,
so he goes out and he finds this meat and he indulges, and it's human meat. So then this Wendigo has lured him into this. It's a very cool take. And essentially it's he locks himself in the bathroom because he can feel himself growing insatiably hungry, and he's surrounded by his closest friends in the middle of nowhere. And anyway, it's a story about these friends trying to stay like the guy that's turning is inside the bathroom and he's like locked in there, and they're like trying to figure out what to do and when he gets out. And it's like it's really good. And it's just another kind of lore idea of like takes the foundation of some of these things and kind of branches off a little bit, because now you've made the Wendigo a trickster, like a lure of. And that's even scarier because it's like, first of all, I'm not eating meat off like a branch. That's not something I'm
no,
doing.
no.
But it's like it. But again, it's all kind of goes back to that concept of like overconsumption. It's like they had like nothing really good to eat because they're just out kind of roughing it, and this smell, and it just kind of talks about like how it just takes over him, and it's kind of anyway, it's all tied together. But it was a really cool little story about the Wendigo take on it that I really liked.
Yeah. So it was like that story is like, well, here's a Wendigo. It's also intelligent. So how about that? You know, because that's what we need also. Uh,
Yeah.
is there well, going on the theme of it being a lesson for people,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, is there a way to escape the Wendigo? Like once it has you, is there no escape, or
No.
you know,
Not that
there's
I've
no coming
read.
there's no coming back from it?
No, because it's definitely not coming after people who just have like, like a slip up of like, pocketing an extra $2 from a friend, right? It's like
Right.
it's these people with these deep rooted like evil intentions is essentially kind of, so
Mhm.
once it has you, that's it until you die.
I'm gonna be good from now on.
Very cheery story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No more acting bad for me. Uh, uh,
We're acting
I'm
bad.
gonna watch what I do from now on.
Yeah. Yeah, the Wendigo is a really, really cool creature. And it's interesting because there are really like, if you ever, when you feel like it, you and the viewers, look up the different renditions of them throughout the years, because they have so many different looks and feels. And each one kind of ties itself to a different part of the lore. Like I was talking about the ones that look more naturey, which you can't see him because he's hidden, but the one above me is very earthy. Like his antlers look like branches. They don't look like
Ooh,
skull.
that's
And
cool.
there's things like that, that tie it to the more spiritual side versus the other more monster like physical thing in our physical existence. And so it's just really cool to like go and look at all the ways that they look and how people have like talk about their sightings and talk about like the lore and how that's changed over the years. And it's pretty interesting.
So that is really awesome. uh, so do those different iterations or different versions, I guess, aesthetically of the
Mhm.
Wendigo, does that vary uh, based on origin, like based on location? Uh, do the do the aspects that make the Wendigo lore, uh, how much of it changes from, like, say, from tribe to tribe, like, Native American tribes that if there are different ones that have their own Wendigo stories. How much do they change? You know,
Yeah.
depending on the storyteller. You know.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it, so the other big thing about them is They are said to only be able to exist in extremely cold climates. Canada is a big one.
Okay.
They talk about them being in Canada a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think as far as like the way that it changes, what I was seeing as far as patterns is we kind of have the very like English like take on what a Wendigo is, which is the hunter starving and he eats people, and that's like. But from what I could see from the Native American side, is a lot of that was really consistent. There weren't a lot of differences. I think the only thing that I saw was, and I can't remember the name of the other tribe, but like if I'm remembering correctly, the Cree tribe, um, were not ones that had the dream belief. That came from
Yeah.
a different tribe. But as far as them, like they definitely lean a lot more on the possession, the spiritual side of things. But it seemed to be a lot of the same information. It starts to change when you add the English take on it, the westernized version of what that looks like, how it's changed over the years, and what some will say is the origin story, but it's not actually the origin story. And those are the stories that seem to be vastly different, especially with how they look. That changes within those. But as far as the other side, it's a lot of the same. They look like they all say they look exactly like this. This is like, and so it's really interesting that most of it doesn't change until you add, the people that came over here after.
God, that is so fascinating. Oh my God.
It's
Uh,
cool.
it is. It
I
is.
love
And
Wendigos.
I didn't know a damn thing about Wendigos before. I mean, I've
That
seen
surprises me. Like I feel like you should.
for as much research as I do on so many things, Wendigo just hasn't come up yet. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think Antlers is like the first, not the first time that I was exposed to
Yeah.
Wendigo, but at least that was the time that I've been the most exposed to the idea of the Wendigo. Uh, I really didn't know much about it going into that movie. Not
Yeah.
much. I knew what it looked like, but that was about it. I didn't
Sure.
know any of the
Yeah.
lore that was attached to it. So, uh,
Yeah.
but what do you think about the depiction of the Wendigo in pop culture, especially in something like Antlers? I mean, I'm only using Antlers because that's like the most
The mainstream kind of.
famous,
Yeah.
yeah, the most mainstream example that I can think of that most people can probably
Yeah.
reference. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I wasn't a really big fan of the movie Antlers. Um I feel like this about most things. When it comes to creature features, I need a lot of creature. And the Wendigo is, while obviously the main point of the story, right? Well, there's some social commentary things too, and some grief and blah blah blah. But as far as like the main, um, there wasn't enough of it. But I loved the way he looked.
yeah,
I thought that was a strength. I wish I had seen more of him. The only thing, and then I loved like the scenes of the transformation. I thought that was super cool. Like super cool. I thought like the way that they did that, it looked so good. And I think that's probably why I wanted to see more, is because I felt like it looked so good. But overall, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is that it kind of sucks that the general consensus is like, oh, it's just cannibalism. And then we think about like when you ask people who don't know a lot, they're gonna tell you the white man hunting story, right? They're gonna tell you this is, and it's like, but that's not where it came from. That's not what it's supposed to represent. Because it's essentially a reminder that you need to live your life moderately and appreciate the things that you have. And don't take from others. Don't, like by trying to satisfy your own things, like look at the bigger picture, right? And it's not as simple as cannibalism. So there are plenty of people that when you say Wendigo, they go, oh my God, do you like that? That's like, but there's a story there. There's a lot more to unpack. And I think that the way that it's represented in most situations is everybody goes to cannibalism and they stay in that very Western mindset of what it is. And it's not, it's so much more than that. And it's hard to explain to people because when people like when I went and interviewed for my job that I've been at, not a little less than a year, I wore long sleeves, got tattoos on my arms, and you just never know. And again, there's a monster on my arm. And so but I remember after I started, and I would wear like t-shirts because I work in like a small panel shop, so it's like you can wear whatever you want. So and people ask me about it, I don't dive into what it actually is, because that's immediately where they go. They go, "Oh, weirdo." And they just like. So I don't know. I hate that it's not, people don't take the time to really look into what a Wendigo represents or what it's about or even where it came from. And I think that that really sucks.
We've become so detached from lore, you know,
I know.
as a society.
Yeah,
I think we need to
you're right.
we need to revive a lot of these stories.
That's
And
what we're trying to do.
I know,
Well,
right?
you do it all the time, but that was one of the reasons I
Nah,
wanted to do something like this,
I
is
do my
because,
best.
yeah, there's so much more.
I do what I can. I'm doing my part.
Just here to help the monsters.
But yeah, I don't know, we just don't tell stories like this anymore, and we're afraid to. It seems,
Yeah.
we're afraid to tell such visceral stories, such graphic stories,
Yeah.
really, because this has cannibalism in it.
Right.
It could be something that contributes to why a lot of people don't know about this. Um,
Yeah.
People are afraid to tell stories with elements like this,
Yeah.
uh, and but that's what makes it compelling, is it not? You know that that's to speak on lore, or even horror as a genre, and it the fact that these stories cross so many lines
Yeah.
to get their point across is what
Yeah.
makes them worth telling.
Yeah. Yeah. There's more to it than this like superficial, like, I mean, and you can look at that with even the big ones, right? Like when you talk about like when I talk about Bigfoot with people, because I'm like a Bigfoot nerd. When you talk about Bigfoot with people and you start kind of talking about the fact that like Bigfoot could be an alien, there's a dimensional element. Like when you start talking about these other theories, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like it's very like they put all of these things in this teeny tiny box, and like when you start saying these things outside of that, it's like, no, thank you. Like, but there really is a lot more. And then especially when you're going back, into specific lores. I mean, a Wendigo is an example, but there's countless others. You're going back to a time when these stories were told not to just be scary, but to teach a moral, a lesson. It's there's something more to it than that, and that just gets so lost nowadays. Nobody wants to hear it.
I want to hear
I know, me too.
it.
I know.
So you're
Um,
a fan of Bigfoot, and you're a
yeah,
fan of the Wendigo, each of which uh, inhabit. I'm going to put in quotes because we don't know for sure.
yeah,
Inhabit the same, if not similar, regions of North America.
yeah.
Have there been any sightings, any reports of them together in the same space?
I don't
Do they
know.
fight each other? What would happen? uh,
Yeah.
I think it would be really cool if somebody came forward and said, "Hey, I saw these two having it out in the woods area, and
Or they're best friends. They have like a
or they're best
secret
friends."
handshake.
Yeah, you know, does
Yeah.
one use the other to to get their prey closer? I don't know. I think it's for a region that has two two cryptids that are uh, so powerful. Not just in a physical sense, um,
Yeah.
but in the zeitgeist. It is just, how do we not
Yeah.
have at least one person, even if they just made that shit up, you know,
Yeah, it's
to say,
right
I saw them both here. You
at the
know,
same time.
how cool of a story would that be?
You should write that. You could write that story.
Sure.
Why not?
I, I mean, yeah, well, sure, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be that guy.
Yeah. All right, you ready for your questions?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. I only did 3 and they're multiple choice. They shouldn't be too complicated, promise.
Okay.
Which body part do you think is most often described as completely missing from the Wendigo? Um, Teeth, mouth, or ears?
So with the Wendigo being mostly a skull from the neck up, I'm gonna go with ears.
Mouth.
Yep. Oh,
But
because I was
the
thinking like because of the
reason,
antlers, maybe we didn't see
yeah.
ears because of the antlers.
So when there's these versions of them that still have pieces of a human face,
Okay.
the thing is it's said that the reason the lips go away and this section goes away is because they get so insatiable they can't stop the chewing.
Oh,
And so
that is
they are said to
gruesome.
not have mouths.
That is incredibly gruesome.
You're
I
welcome.
love it.
Yeah. I
Wow.
mean, I put teeth in there, but that was not like obviously not teeth. So,
So that is wow. Okay.
yeah. No
And I
lips.
love those little details in the lore that make sense. They're really, really
They
small
really
details.
thought this stuff through, right? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
because they're like, oh, like this would be the natural order of what would happen if someone truly were insatiable, if they really just couldn't stop, and this was happening so frequently, then that makes perfect sense. Um,
Oh, that blows my mind. That is
yeah.
such a small detail can have such a big impact.
It's unsettling too, because then you're
Yeah.
picturing it. Like your imagination runs with you. You're like, oh, that looks bizarre in my head.
Oh,
Now I
that's
can't get it out.
exactly what my mind did when you were describing that. Disturbing.
Mine too. When I read it, I was like, oh, like what's his name? Chatter, whatever from Hellraiser.
Yeah, the chatter. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
Imagine having to look like that the rest of your life.
No thanks. So the next one is, what superpower do you think Windows? It's late. No one judge me. Wendigos. I have said it flawless this entire time. What superpower do you think Wendigos are said to not have?
Not
Super speed, the ability to fly, or the ability to smell prey from miles away?
okay. So I'm gonna go a little bit with logic on this. I guess I'm gonna try to do some deduction here.
Yeah,
I'm going to assume that they can smell prey from miles away, being that they're a woodland creature, uh, yeah, or a woodland predator. Um,
sure.
I guess that's the only one I'm really trying to use deduction with. The other one is I'm gonna guess on sheer hope here that they can't fly
You're like, it can do literally everything else.
because it can do literally everything else. I just hope that it can't fly, so I'm gonna go with it can't fly.
You're right. Yeah.
Okay,
There's
good,
nothing in the
good.
lore or sightings or anything that suggests that anyone thinks that Wendigos can fly.
They don't need to.
They've done fair enough.
They've done enough.
Oh, and then the last one is one you asked about previously, which is what part, well, this is a little more into that, but what part of the Wendigo's body do you think must be destroyed to officially kill it? Um, Decapitation is the only way. The heart must be set on fire, or total body dismemberment.
Well, all of those are really good ways to kill something.
Yeah.
Uh,
I did make this one a little hard because all of those are like the go-to ways to kill baddies, like,
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And I'm trying to think back on the movie Antlers and how that Wendigo went.
you should. Yep,
Uh,
that'll
and
help.
now I'm just kind of starting to draw a blank because I didn't like the ending of that movie.
No. I didn't like the movie at all, so
Like that movie was kind of going okay. It was going like a Jaws route for most of it, where you don't see it and then you see it at the end, and it's just like. But then I kind of got a little sick of it by the end. Like, oh my god, now what happened? Oh my
fair
god,
enough.
how
Fair
did
enough.
how did how did she defeat the thing? Did she set the heart on fire?
You tell me. What do you think?
I think she
What do
set the
you
heart on fire.
remember?
I'm gonna go with set the heart on fire.
Yeah, that's right.
Ah, yes.
Some of the other ways that I did not include is the use of silver. There's a lot of a lot of parallels here between Wendigos and werewolves.
Oh,
Silver, and it is said that the only person who can save someone who has been possessed by a Wendigo is a shaman.
so there is a way out,
Sort
as
of.
long as the shaman likes you.
Well, and it's one of those things too where it's like in other the other side of it with like demonic possession where like your body is like too far gone to save most of the
Okay,
time because you've usually been taken over for a long time. So it's usually the method is to just kill everybody, the host and everything. But those
right.
were the ways that if it's early enough, they would try a shaman first, and then if that didn't work, silver. Yeah. So those
So
are
when
the
you're
other ways
early
to go.
on into the possession, like how quickly does the possession happen to when it's too late to see a shaman? Does it happen too quickly for that most of the time?
I would
Uh,
assume so. I mean,
are there
so it says
signs?
that like as soon as it happens, like everything that I saw is like once it happens, it's like a pretty quick changeover to like that hunger like just destroying you from the inside out.
Okay,
Especially when you're talking about the parts of like the rotting body. Like so once your body has been taken over by that, it starts to decay because it's turning into this other thing and like and that's kind of the point is like even if I mean I guess the other side of it probably and I don't know this for sure but my other thought is if a shaman is able to pull it out even if you die maybe at least your soul is saved, maybe
mm,
that's the difference.
okay.
But otherwise heart on fire, silver.
Take a shaman with you into the woods.
Yeah, or just don't go. This is another reason to like not leave your house. Like just stay inside.
Being an introvert isn't too bad.
Yeah, and don't
Usually
dream
so.
about them because that's
Well, I mean,
bad
I
juju.
get, I guess. And I don't know how to get away from that. I'm just gonna stay up tonight.
Yeah, like a different take on Nightmare on Elm Street. Wendigo instead of Freddy.
Oh my! I'll take. I don't know who I take. Honestly,
They
I don't know.
both suck.
They both suck. Yeah,
Yeah.
equally. They're just a different kind of suck.
Yep. Totally agree.
Ooh,
So yeah,
this is a really really cool animal. Uh,
yes. I wonder if I can fix my camera really quick so you can see my Wendigo.
sure.
Can you see him up there?
Yes, I can. Ooh,
Yeah.
like that.
So that was the
That's nice.
inspiration for my
Okay.
tattoo.
Yeah.
That picture is done by Print is Dead. Um,
Okay.
she does. I have a sticker of him too, but I don't know where my sticker is. Is it on my laptop? It's either on my laptop or on my Cricut. But either way, I'm obsessed with him. Like he's gorgeous. And she did these really cool edits of him where he's like, and the one I have, he looks like he pencils, like he's penciled in. He looks really cool. Maybe if I remember, I'll take a picture and send it to you after we're done. But it's really cool. And so that was the inspiration for my tattoo was I wanted something earthy like that because his body is made of bark almost, and his
Yeah.
antlers are made of wood. It's really cool. But anyway, so
It's a
yeah,
beautiful
super
thing.
big fan of Wendigos.
It is just a really cool looking creature.
It is.
It is. It's a beautiful creature,
It is.
and I really love the creativity that has gone into making this thing. It's
Yeah.
it's so cool.
It's
So
wild. Totally
oh
agree.
my god.
Yeah. So I think that's about it for this episode of Beasts and Moves. Um, just a reminder, Ivan's links will be in the description for this episode, so make sure you're following him and checking out his series, Gallivant with Grotesque. Especially if you really love conversations like this, he covers it on a whole different level over there. So definitely go follow and keep up with that. And yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us on this episode. We will be back in, I think, another 2 weeks. Until then, have a good rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you in the next one.
Don't get seconds on cupcakes.